about to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out, die with my own doubts. Be free with me. Let's be free with Not looking back, eyes on the freeway, Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the run, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out, die with my own doubts. Be free.
Good evening, everybody. It's John here from Tutor to You. Welcome you to another study live stream for A-Level Economics. And tonight we're going to be talking about balance of payments, BOP, as I've said in the chat window. We know that lots of students like this subject, but also lots of students find it quite tricky. So we've got 30 minutes or so of fast-paced activities, a little bit of exam gold just to help you out. Big warm welcome to those of you joining us live, and I can see from my little clock in front of me here, we've got a few of you already there. Lovely to see you as always, and we are desperately hoping that you are going to help us out by giving us some answers in the chat window on YouTube. If you're here watching on replay, on catch up, then welcome to you as well. You can take a little bit more time and actually pause the video at those moments where we're asking very quick questions. I'm joined tonight by two of our favourite presenters. In the middle of the screen, I've got Kathy. Kathy, your dulcet tones are welcome every other week or so, it would seem. But back for the first time this term, although backed by very large demand, we have Henry on the right-hand side of the screen. Evening, Henry.
Hi, evening.
Good. And good to see you both and good to hear you both as well.
And
okay,
you.
I think we're ready to get started. Shall I go on to the PowerPoint for us?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's
Go for it. Cool, so we will be beginning this evening with a 60-second challenge. What you're going to see is on the left a bunch of key phrases, and on the right the definitions to these key phrases. What I want you to do is to go onto a chat and write which definition matches up with each key phrase. Each one is going to be lettered or numbered, so match the letters to the numbers. Next slide, please. 60 seconds, off we go. Okay, time is up. Let's see how you did. So, first one is the capital account. Capital account, it should be A4. The capital account being the section which includes effects of debt forgiveness, sale and transfer of patents, copyrights, franchises, leases, and other transferable contracts across borders. Essentially, it records the net flow of investment transaction in the economy. Then you have the current account. The current account just measures the difference between the money and credit going in and out of the economy. Hot money, money that flows freely and quickly around the world, looking to earn the best rate of return. What it means by the best rate of return is where are you getting the biggest rate of return on interest rates. So if you save your monies in pounds, then you are going to get the Bank of England, well, not the Bank of England, but if the Bank of England interest rate is high, then that means that that the commercial banks are going to be charging a higher interest rate, meaning that you're going to get a better return on holding the pound. There's also net primary income, net flow of profits, interest, dividends, investments, and also remittances from migrant workers. Net secondary income, that includes overseas aid, debt relief, military grants, and payments to the EU, and remittances, sending money to people in another country. Once again, that tends to be for migrant workers. Well done.
Okay, so the first exam gold top tip is mine. So when you get questions on the balance of payments, they usually focus on one of three areas. So they might ask you about the extent to which a current account deficit or a surplus, remember, is a problem for an economy. Other types of questions might ask you about why this has happened. So, what are the possible causes of a current account deficit or a current account surplus? And the third type of questions, what could you do about this? So, what are the possible policies for correcting a current account deficit or a current account surplus? So, these are the types of questions to make sure that you are prepared for. Now, I've got 5 multiple choice questions coming up next, so it'd be absolutely great if you could put your answers on the chat. So, question number 1. Which of the following will be accounted for on the current account of an economy's balance of payments? Is it sale of copyright, dividends from foreign investment, FDI, or short-term hot money flows? Do you think it's A, B, C, or D? There's just one correct answer here. Now, I think there's quite a lag on the chat this evening, but let's just give you a few moments to put up your answers. Apologies if I'm not seeing them. I'm not seeing anything on the chat. Yes, would be absolutely great if you could put something up there. John, can you reveal the answer for us? Okay, and the correct answer here is B. So dividends from foreign investment, these are going to come in. I can see B's come up now, so well done. These are going to come in through the primary income part of the current account. So well done if you got that right. John, could we have question number 2 then? So which of the following would appear as a credit item in the UK current account? Is it money sent by UK residents to their relatives abroad? The purchase by a French company of a UK insurance business? The expenditure of Japanese tourists on holiday in Britain? Or D, expenditure by the British government in maintaining foreign embassies overseas? Which of these is a credit item in the current account? So not a credit item anywhere in the balance of payments. We're asking specifically about the current account. Let's have your answers on the chat. Once you think you know what this might be, just give you a little bit longer to have a think about this. And John, could you reveal the answer for us? Okay, so the correct answer here is C. Now, this is something that my students often get quite muddled about. I don't know about you, Henry. My students think, well, the tourists are coming in. Therefore, it must be an import. But actually, what you've got to think about is which direction is the money going. So when tourists come into the UK, the money is coming in with them. Therefore, it's a credit item. This type of activity counts in the current account. So I can see some C's coming up now. So well done, and apologies that the lag means I'm not seeing them as you put them up there. Question number 3, please, John. The current account of a country's balance of payments is most likely to benefit from a depreciation of its currency when it is experiencing, is it A, price elastic demand for imports, B, full employment, C, price inelastic demand for exports, or D, high interest rates? So add your answers to the chat when you think you know which the correct answer might be. Just going to give you a couple of seconds more. John, would you like to show us the correct answer? And the correct answer is A. So a depreciation in the currency, that's going to make imports more expensive. So if demand for imports is price elastic, that means that the amount spent on them will go down. So A is the correct answer. And I can see now loads of A's coming in on the screen. Question number 4, please, John. Imports into the UK are likely to rise as a result of, is it A, households saving more of their income, B, UK prices rising more slowly than prices in other countries, C, rising UK national income, or D, the external value of sterling decreases? Which of these are likely to be reasons for imports into the UK rising? So just going to give you a couple of seconds more. I'm not going to wait for the answers on the chat because I know the lag means we're going to be here forever if I do that. John, would you like to share the right answer with us? Okay, so the answer we were looking for here is C. If UK national income is going up, a lot of that income is going to be spent on imports. There's quite in the UK what's called a high propensity to import. Quite a lot of additional income is spent on imports. I could see some of you got that right. Some D's coming up on the screen. So if the value of sterling decreases, that is going to make imports more expensive. So question number 5, the last one of the multiple choice, please, John. A country is running a persistent trade deficit. The most likely effect of this is to cause a rise in employment in export industries, reduce consumer spending on imported goods, cause an appreciation in the value of the exchange rate, or D, reduce the level of aggregate demand. So which of these do you think is the correct answer? The most likely effect of a persistent trade deficit. Add your answers to the screen because the chances are I will see them as I'm giving explanations. John, do you want to reveal the correct answer? And the correct answer here is D. So if you're running a persistent trade deficit, your imports are exceeding your exports. So if you think about the circular flow of income, imports are a leakage. They're a withdrawal from the circular flow. Exports are an injection. So you've got more money leaking out of your circular flows. So you're going to have this downward pressure on aggregate demand. Now I'm going to hand back to Henry now.
So here we have our next piece of exam gold. The current account is more than the trade balance, so students should consider the other elements, brackets, net primary and net secondary income. So the reason why this is so important in exams is, particularly on longer responses, particularly on essays, you want to show the examiner that you really understand what the current account is. You're not just giving, because it's quite easy to, I suppose, conflate the two ideas. The current account is exports minus imports. That would be seen as showing that you don't quite understand things as accurately as you could, and you don't understand things with the level of precision that maybe a top student would. So making sure that you define things properly. The other reason why this is an important exam tip is because it helps you with your ceteris paribus assumption. If you are saying that the trade balance is negative, therefore the current account decreases, well, that is only going to be true as long as net primary and net secondary income are held equal. So this is another opportunity for you to use a ceteris paribus assumption. Thank you very much, John. Next slide, please.
Just before I do, Henry, I should point out that the next activity is our first festive activity. We have reached December, haven't we? So I think it's time to do one or two little festive themed activities. Here we go.
Oh,
So,
look at that.
As you can see, it is a Christmas cracker, and we've got a nice little pun there, cracker the code. What we have is different items from the UK's current account, the first quarter of 2021. So, earlier this year. In order of value, which ones do you think are the highest? Just a quick reminder for you. When it says debit, that means it's money flowing in. And when it says credit, that means it is money flowing out. So, in the chat, could you put what you think is going to be the highest value?
Is that the right way round, Henry?
Sorry, debit is money flowing in, credit money flowing out. Have I said it right?
Okay. We'll go with your version.
Yeah, debit money flowing in, credit money flowing out.
Okay.
No, sorry, I've absolutely said that wrong, haven't I? I keep getting that mixed up.
Credit is a plus, isn't it?
Credit money flowing in. Yeah, of course, because if you have,
yes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, other way around. So when it is a debit, that means it is coming out. When it is a credit, that means it is money coming in. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So off you go. Highest value first, please. Complete mind blank there, but hopefully it hasn't confused you too much. If we can start seeing something coming through in the chat, give it another 10 seconds because a little bit more to think about here.
I think this is quite hard because we're used to seeing the net figures, aren't we?
Mm-hmm. But if you understand whether we have a net negative trade in goods versus a net positive trade in goods.
So tutor to you helping out on the chat saying my bank manager definitely says the debit is going out.
Yeah, no, just absolute. Got a bit tongue-tied there.
It's the excitement over the first of the Christmas activities.
Must be it. Okay, John, can we get the answers, please? DFBEAC. Can't say anything today. Fantastic. And if we could go to the next slide, please. So the way that you can best work this out is to essentially think, for the UK, understanding a bit of context, is there likely to be more imports of goods, or is there likely to be more exports of goods? Well, because we are importing more than we export, because we are a net importer of goods, that means that D is going to be the highest. The debit money coming out of the economy is going to be the highest. So 102.9 billion. And then the next thing is goods. However, we are actually a net exporter of services. We are a leading exporter of things like insurance, of some accountancy, a lot of financial services, legal services as well. So as a result, that means that we have a net positive export of goods. Not of goods, net positive export of services, meaning that our total trade and services credit is greater than our debit. And our secondary income is actually relatively small. It doesn't make up a relatively big part of it. The largest part of the current account is still the trading goods and the trading services, but we do tend to have more secondary income coming out of the economy, which we'd expect because we are likely to be giving more aid and things like that. Thank you very much.
I think this one's yours as well. That's it. Now, that's it. Now, this is mine. The exam gold top tip is mine, definitely. So, like all sorts of questions, when you're thinking about what policies you're going to discuss, you need to think about the causes. So we need to think about the causes of a current account deficit in order to talk about the right kinds of policies. So deficits might be caused by a booming economy, for example, in which producers need to purchase more raw materials from abroad to keep up with domestic demand, or they might be caused by major structural problems in the economy. And it's this that's making exports undesirable. And you're going to want quite different policies for those two scenarios. Right, John, I think I've got the next Christmas activity. How marvellous is this? I have to say, I've been doing Christmas activities with my students for about a week now. I couldn't wait for the 1st of December. So what you need to do here, you're going to have a minute, and I'm hoping it's a minute with Christmas music. Let's see what happens. And you need to sort these 8 items into whether they are structural causes of a current account deficit or cyclical causes of a current account deficit. So structural, think, is the problem on the supply side of the economy, or cyclical, is it to do with demand? Is it to do with the stage of the economic cycle? So John, could you start 1 minute on the clock, please?
Was that music Christmassy enough for you, Kathy?
It was Christmassy
good,
enough. Yes,
good.
thank you very much. Right, John, would you like to show us the answers then, please? Here we go. So we've got 4 on each side. Probably easiest to start with the cyclical causes of the current account deficit. So those to do with the stage of the economic cycle. So number 1 went on this side. So if you've got a recession in your key export markets, it's going to be much harder to export. Number 8 is on here as well. Increased demand for imported technology. So if your economy is growing, really quickly, then it's much more likely that you will be importing things like this. 2, a boom in domestic demand. As I said earlier, when your economy is growing fast, you are much more likely to be importing all sorts of things. And number 4, a slump in global prices of exports. So if there's a global slump in prices, the value of your exports will be going down. And do remember, when you're talking about these items on the current account, it's the value of them that matters. Moving over on to the structural causes of the current account deficit, then, these are things to do with the supply side of your economy. So if we start with number 3 in the bottom right, if you are not doing sufficient research and development, then you are not going to be coming up with innovative ideas, either to do with your production processes or to do with your products. We go up from there. If your productivity growth is low, if it's relatively low, then that means that typically your exports are going to be less price competitive. Under investment, well, that links again with how productive you are, and actually perhaps how non-price competitive your products are as well. So are your exports things that people actually want to buy because they're interesting, the quality is good? And going down now to number 7, it might just be that somebody is doing things better than you. So all of this is relative. Okay, then. I believe it's back to Henry now for his on balance activity.
Great. So the next activity, we are going to look at reasons for and reasons against. So we're going to look at some reasons for why a current account deficit may be harmful and the reason why it may not be. So making sure that we have a reason, and we're also considering the other side by evaluating the argument. So in the chat, if you could write one reason why having a current account deficit may be harmful, have a go. So I'll give you a little bit of time for this, because this is going to take a little bit more thinking. Going to need to write some words rather than just type in letters. But if we could get a reason why the current account deficit might be harmful, you might want to think, what do we mean by harmful? Harmful for who? Any ideas? Give you another 20 seconds for that. Okay, I believe there's a bit of lag in the chat. So John, if we could get some of the answers as I talk through it, hopefully some will come through. Right. So a current account might be a current account deficit might be harmful because, number one, it can lead to exchange rate weaknesses. Now, what do we mean by weaknesses? Well, if we have a current account deficit, that means that most likely foreign consumers aren't looking to buy UK goods. That means that the demand for the pound is low, leading to the depreciation of the sterling. Because there's a depreciation of the sterling, that means that UK consumers are going to be worse off because they're not able to buy as many foreign goods with their pounds. The other thing is going to be the negative impact on industries affected by rising imports. Industries need raw materials in order to produce their goods. Well, if we have a weak exchange rate, i.e., if we have the pound not buying as many dollars, that means that they can't import as many raw materials. As a result, that means that if you can't buy as many raw materials, then it's going to be more expensive for producers, and you essentially get imported inflation. It's going to negatively affect UK consumers in terms of buying UK goods, as goods are going to be more expensive to produce, and therefore some of that price will be passed on to the consumer. So we had some ideas on the chat. Also, there's the idea of leakages. Because it's a leakage from the economy, then that makes GDP likely smaller. And also depreciation in the exchange rate, exactly what was said there. Thank you very much. And if we could get a reason for why it might not be so harmful to outweigh it, what kind of reasons could there be for a current account deficit not necessarily being so harmful? Give you about 30 seconds for this one too. Another 10 seconds or so. Brilliant. So we've got some ideas on the chat. One idea being that trade has less weight in the AD equation. It's certainly less significant than consumption. So that might be something that outweighs the leakage. But John, what do we have on our next slide? We have got that the floating exchange rate should automatically reduce the level of deficit. So let's have a think about how this might work. We've talked about how having a current account deficit leads to exchange rate weakness, i.e. the pound depreciates because of the low demand for the pound. But then if the pound depreciates, then that also means that it becomes cheaper to export and it becomes more expensive for UK consumers to import. So they're going to be adjusting away from imports, and UK producers are going to be able to export more. As a result of that, that should actually slightly balance out the current account deficit. It should reduce the size of the deficit because it encourages UK consumers to not import so much, and UK producers become more attractive for foreign buyers. Also, it depends on what we're importing. So even though a current account deficit means that we are importing more than we are exporting, or at least it suggests that because of the trade balance, it depends on what we import. Because if we end up importing capital goods being things like machinery, things that ultimately increase productive capacity of the UK, then this is going to be something that benefits long-run GDP, long-run growth. So as a result, that is going to likely outweigh the negatives that are caused from the current account deficit. So that's going to be some of the ideas. A current account deficit isn't necessarily going to be harmful, but there is definitely going to be something in terms of those exchange rate weaknesses, but it might be balanced out. Thank you very much. I believe the next slide is for you, Kathy. Thank you.
It is yet another Christmas activity. So the Bauble Quiz has been replaced by the Bauble Quiz. John, could we have the first one? We've got two of these, I believe. So the way that the Bauble Quiz works, there could be any number of correct answers. We're not just looking for one, as we were with the multiple choice. There might be none, 1, 2, 3, or they might all be correct. So in this case, the question, if the economy is at full employment, which might be the effect of an increase in exports? How many of these are correct answers, and which ones are correct? So what we'd like you to put on the chat is the letters of the correct answer. For export, if the economy is at full employment, what might be the effect of an increase in exports? Which, if any of these, are correct? All right, John, would you like to reveal the answers? How marvellous is that? Look, the gold star there. So only one of these was correct. Answer A. So in a minute, I'm going to see if anyone actually got that right on the chat. So if you're at full employment and exports increase, then that's going to boost AD, and that's going to push you into a positive output gap. So very likely higher inflation is going to be the consequence of that. So not higher deflation, which is B. If you're at full employment, then you can't have higher employment, or perhaps you can, but only temporarily. And D is wrong, of course. You're not going to see an increase in spare capacity. So very well done if you got that right. And I can see that some of you did. So here we are, our second Bauble quiz. When is the deficit on the current account of the balance of payments are likely to improve? So which of these are correct answers? Just give you a little bit of time to look at these. There's quite a lot to read on each of the baubles. So we're looking for which of these would lead to an improvement in the deficit on current account. Add your answers to the chat. It's lovely to see that so many of you are. Just going to give you a couple of seconds more. Right, John, would you like to show us the sparkly stars for the correct answers then? So this time it was A, B, and C. So A, then, when the government devalues the currency. Now, it does depend a bit on the elasticities, but that would usually be reckoned to improve the deficit on current account. B, when a government adopts a contractionary macro policy. So that's going to lead to falling incomes, and so demand for imports will fall, and it might also reduce inflationary pressure, perhaps making your exports more price competitive or even more price competitive. And the third one, C, when the incomes from overseas investment are higher than expected. So this is going to be a credit item on primary income, and that's going to reduce the deficit on current account. Well done if you got that right. Now, John, I'm going to hand back to you for the surprise activity.
Thank you, Kathy. And if you've been watching these sessions over the last few weeks, and I know looking at some of the names in the chat window, we've got our regular contributors. It's lovely to see you back. You know, this is our traditional way of finishing off these sessions where we pit the wisdom of our expert teachers here in the studios, and just think about all the years that Kathy and Henry have been teaching, all those years combined. We're going to pit their wisdom against those of you who are watching, and we would love to see you put your suggestions down for the answer to this question and see whether you can beat Kathy and Henry. And so far, I would say most weeks the students are coming out on top, but let's see how we go today. So here we go. So remember, with this one, we're going to have a question with a numerical answer, and I'm not expecting anybody to actually know the answer. What I'm expecting you to do is have a bit of a guess, and let's see who can get as close as we possibly can. Here we go. Here's the question. In the first quarter of this year, 2021, the UK's current account deficit actually narrowed a little bit to £12.7 billion. So there was Henry talking about the pros and cons of a current account deficit, and ours in the UK is getting slightly smaller. What is this figure, £12.7 billion, as a percentage of the UK's GDP? Okay, what we're trying to do here is put a bit of context behind that number. So we're saying that the current account deficit is 12.7 billion. What does that represent as a proportion of our economy's output? That's what we're asking here. Now, as he's not done one of these before, we're going to let Henry have the first stab at this. But I'm looking forward, just before Henry gives us his ideas, looking forward to seeing any suggestions from people on the chat window. Please don't cheat. Please don't go onto the internet and have a look. I know you could do that. Take it in the spirit that we're doing it with here. Poor Henry and poor Kathy are having to do it without any additional help at all. What do you reckon, Henry? What do you reckon as a percentage? What do you think?
So I believe that the current account deficit essentially is somewhere between 0 to -5% of GDP.
Okay.
So I believe that it kind of floats beyond that. And if it's narrowed, I'm going to go for maybe 2.5%. Yeah,
Henry,
we'll go for 2.5. We'll go 2.5.
2.5%. Thank you. I'm just having a look at the chat window to see who's in agreement with you, who disagrees with you. So Henry's going with 2.5%. What do you think, Kathy? Is Henry right, or do you want to have a different?
I'm with Henry in thinking numbers between 0 and 5. I've sort of got in my head that in kind of normal times, the current account is perhaps about double this. So
Okay.
I think Henry's pretty close. I'm going to go for 2.1.
2.1. Right, and I'm glad you went with a different one, Kathy. It's always good to have two different answers.
Just having a look at that, because I got told off before for agreeing. I was told I had to come up with a different one, so I've gone for 2.1.
Thank you.
I have a feeling I've gone the wrong side of Henry's, though, but we'll see.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Bavi's coming with 2%. It's good to see some people coming in with some thoughts on it. Let's put everybody out of their misery. Henry went with 2.5. Kathy went with 2.1. The answer is 2.3. So actually, Kathy, you're just you're the same distance apart, aren't you? You're 2.3 is bang in the middle.
We're equal winners.
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Wow, another brilliant session, another fun and fantastic session. And in terms of the answers, guys, some really stunning ones. I'm going to read out a list of the people who gave us answers. And forgive me if I've missed anybody here. Sammy Bavia, Marshy, the Greater Doodoo, great name. Samson Fatoon, Woke Pope, who's a regular contributor. Wintana and Minecraft are there as well. Brilliant. So many really good answers. Now, listen.
Really good.
We know that this topic is difficult, and we know some of those questions have been quite hard and difficult for you to do in the time constraint. So, don't forget that the PowerPoint slides that we've been using tonight are available to download as soon as I've clicked the little finish button on this session in the next few seconds or so. And of course, you can always watch this video all over again if you wanted to go through some of those questions again. At least you'd know the answer to the shot in the dark the second time around. Now, we're going to be back next week. Henry, you're joining me again, aren't you? We're going to be talking about sort of a little bit of a behavioural economics stuff. Kathy, I think you're not with us next week, so
no, I'm
good
not.
to see you,
No.
and we'll see you in the new year, I'm sure. Have a great Christmas, Kathy, and
Thank
to
you
everybody
very
who's watching, goodbye, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye, everybody.
All right. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Good evening. Bye.